So we might see the IRIS-T being added as a ground-launched vehicle, but what are other systems similar to that could be added to some of the nations that we have in the game for the next update? Especially more advanced AAs that we currently have, right? So let's get to it. We have a list of 5 for the US, Germany, Britain, France, and Israel. We start off with the SLMRAM, right? This SLAMRAM, I think it's called, or basically the surface-launched AMRAAM, right? Advanced Medium Range Air-to-Air Missile. So this would be an interesting thing. It is pretty much just a Humvee with 4 AIM-120s, and it can actually take 2 AIM-9Xs as well, and an external radar. So we can have a towed vehicle here. I don't know, something similar to that that could be added there, right? Or basically how I still believe that you should be. It's basically you drive around in the Humvee. Once you found the position, you click a button similar-ish to dropping the ammo crate, and it basically builds the radar there or something like that. It's stationary, right? And you have to maintain a certain position to have the information from the radar or something like that, right? But basically, it would be AMRAAM launcher with AIM-9Xs as well, right? Of course, remember, this is being launched from a 0-0 perspective, so 0 altitude and 0 speed. So although it is an AIM-120, and they even use the AIM-120 C5s and even C7s, if I'm not mistaken, it doesn't mean that it will have the whole range that these missiles would have normally in an air-launched platform, just because, of course, it is being launched from 0 speed and 0 altitude, right? So I don't know exactly what the range is. They actually tested in the late 90s, I think, with the B model, and it was around 15 kilometers that it could actually do interceptions. I don't know if this is the max range or just the range that they tested, but anyway, it should be significantly lower than a normal AIM-120 range, but also a pretty good range no matter what, right? So at least 15 kilometers, which is pretty cool. And of course, it has the AIM-9X, which would be one of the best IR missiles in the game, comparable to the IRIS-T if added, right? So this would be the first one for the US. Another one that can be added for the Germans is a similar-ish missile from the IRIS-T SLS. I'm not sure if it could actually be added right now, but they have the IRIS-T SLM. This would improve the range of the missile and altitude of the missile. Actually, the range, they say it's up to 40 kilometers. I would doubt that it would actually be able to have an optimal range of that. It would probably be around 20 to 30 kilometers max, maybe probably less, right? But it would be basically an IR missile that uses GPS guidance and with inertial navigation system together with the IR final guidance to actually get to the target. It would be very similar to the IRIS-T SLS that we talked about. The problem with this is actually having the whole vehicle with the proper radars and everything, right? Because normally the search radar, the tracking radar, and then the launchers, they are basically multiple vehicles, right? So I don't know how they would produce this. Again, we need to wait and see how they plan to do this. I still believe having some form of towed vehicle to have the radars, even if it's a little bit of a stretch in realism, would be probably the only way to add this, or some form of truck that you can deploy just like an ammo crate, the radars on basically standing still position or something like that, right? But yeah, for the Germans, it would be a very similar IRIS-T that we already talked about, but with an improved range and system, okay? And then for the Israelis, we have a very similar vehicle, the SPYDER system. This would be another multi-vehicle system, but together with stationary radars that can be deployed, just like I said, with similar-ish mechanic to the ammo crate, we can have basically a Python 5 and Derby launcher. It would be pretty much the same as we already talked about, some air-to-air missiles that are being brought up to be ground-to-air missile, right? So you would have a truck that launched the Derby or the Python 5. Of course, the Python is an infrared homing, electrical optical imaging system. maybe too much for now, but at least the Derby we already have in the game, you know, with active radar homing. They say that the max range, the normal interception range of this would be around 15 kilometers as well. There are better versions out there, of course, with 35 kilometers, but probably would be 9 to 15 kilometers, the normal operational range of these. So very similar to the Panther and stuff, but of course using an active radar homing missile. So obviously a lot better when you are using this type of thing, right? Of course, the good part about this is that it can be a 360, degree launch, because it can, just point vertically and then fire the missile, whatever the distance, the direction is. And like I said, it would have a radar that is very small, actually, and the launchers, basically, right? So it has, a normal electronic scanner array radar, that it's a search radar and then a tracking radar. Both are very small, so they can be deployed from the same truck. Like I said, with the building mechanism of the, of the ammo crate, maybe having another button, right? You click Ctrl-Shift-T, the radar, the search radar appears. You click to construct it. It takes a little bit of time. The search radar is constructed, then another one for the tracking radar, and then you are good to go. And you have to stay within the range of those to be able to launch the missile, right? And of course, maybe if they get destroyed, you can get to a base or some form of like flag or something and reload it, get the radars onto the truck again or something like that. This is probably the most realistic one, because these radars are really quite small, it's not gonna be realistic, because in real life, of course, you would have many trucks driving around together with this, but to have a gameplay purpose, it might be able to be added, which is pretty cool. Another one that can be added like that is the MICA, the VL MICA, the vertically launched, I think it's called MICA, which is basically a surface-to-air version of that missile. Of course, it would be fired from truck mounted as well, and they can also have radars similar to the other ones that we talked about already, but it would be pretty much the same. We can have IR or radar versions of these missiles being launched, so it means that it would basically be that a MICA missile that you already know and love, but having, of course, a ground launched situation, right? Of course, remember, the range is severely degraded because of the way that a ground-launched vehicle will launch this. They advertise that it has a 20-kilometer range, but normally it would be that it would have a 0 to 7 kilometers of maximum turning capability range, and then after that it would decrease and decrease and decrease until it doesn't have a lot of energy to be able to do anything else. So normally it would be max range 20 kilometers, optimal range up to 7, but between 7 and 20 it would decrease the amount of turn that the missile can do. Up to 7 kilometers, it can actually do 50 Gs, right? So it's pretty interesting. And of course, if they want to, they can add the IR one as well, right? But since we don't have that missile yet, at least, on the very least, the radar one would already be cool. Having ground radars, trucks, the same way that we talked about before from the other vehicles, okay? And another one for the British that can be added, it is the Land Ceptor. This basically is the same system that we already talked about basically throughout the whole video, right? It's the same type of thing, so it would be a truck that can launch an air-to-air missile that is mounted in a ground-to-air situation. In this case, it would use the ASRAAM missile. So yeah, pretty good as well, next generation of missile. Comparable to AMRAAMS, IRIS-Ts, and everything that we are talking about during the video, right? Reportedly would have around 15 kilometers of range, but of course these can change as well. And yes, although normally it would be carried with many trucks, I'm sure the Gaijin can enhance this with some form of towed radar or a radar that is stationary that we can plant on the ground, just like we talked about with SPYDER and the others, right? But the cool part about this version is that they actually have an electro-optical targeting system, so they can have a way to launch this missile when it is on side of the launcher, right? Basically aiming to the missile and stuff. to the target. So it can't be just a normal camera that you can just point to the target and launch the missile. Of course, it would be an IR missile, but you get the point, right? It would be pretty much the same amazing turning capability these missiles have, the most modern British missile that they use, you know, in the terms of IR guidance. So it's just pretty good. Like I said, normally this missile would have 25 kilometers or more, but the thing is ground launched, so we would probably have around 15, okay? Maybe less, maybe more, depending on the situation. And basically this is it, guys. It is very interesting to see these vehicles. Hopefully they get added. I think it's the only way we can see these types of AA systems being added, because honestly, if we don't see these, yeah, CAS will only get better and better, or they will need to just cap CAS, basically don't have anything in CAS, so that it's balanced, right? In this way we can have very advanced missiles to defend and very advanced missiles to attack. So very cool, right? Anyway, let me know in the comments what you think about it, and I see you guys on the next one. Bye guys, see ya.